Hi, Dr. Marianne again. This is a very popular story called The Elephant's Child by Rudyard Kipling, very popular. I'm going to share my screen right away. The book looks like this, and it goes with video 11, book 11, and we're going to have some comprehension questions at the end, which are adorable. So let me show you as I read along. As you follow, I underline with my finger for your child to follow along. In the high and far off times of Elephant, oh, best beloved, had no trunk. He had only a blackish, bulgy nose, as big as a boot, that he could wriggle around from side to side. But he couldn't pick up things with it. But there was one elephant, a new elephant, an elephant's child, who was full of satiable curiosity, and that means he asked ever so many questions. Satiable means they could be answered if people took the time. And he lived in Africa, and he filled all Africa with his satiable curiosities. He asked his tall aunt, the ostrich, why her tail feathers grew just so, and his tall aunt, the ostrich, spanked him with her hard claw. He asked his tall uncle, the giraffe, what made his skin spotty, and his tall uncle, the giraffe, spanked him with his hard hoof. And still he was full of satiable curiosity. He asked his broad aunt, the hippopotamus, why her eyes were red, and his broad aunt, the hippopotamus, spanked him with her broad hoof. And he asked his hairy uncle, the baboon, why melons tasted just so, and his hairy uncle, the baboon, spanked him with his hairy paw. And still he was full of satiable curiosity. He asked questions about everything that he saw, or heard, or felt, or smelled, or touched, and all the uncles and his aunts spanked him. And still he was full of satiable curiosity. One fine morning, in the middle of the procession of the equinoxes, this satiable elephant's child asked a new fine question that he had never asked before. What does the crocodile have for dinner? Then everybody said, hush, in a loud voice, in a dreadful tone. They spanked him immediately and directly without stopping for a long time. By and by, when that finished, he came upon a colo bird sitting in the middle of a wait a bit thorn bush, and he said, my father has spanked me, my mother has spanked me, all my aunts and uncles have spanked me for my satiable curiosity. And still, I want to know what the crocodile has for dinner. Then Colo bird said with a mournful cry, go to the banks of the great green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, and find out. That very next morning, when there was nothing left of the equinoxes, because the procession had proceeded according to precedent, this satiable elephant took 100 pounds of bananas, the little short red kind, and 100 pounds of sugar cane, the long purple kind, and 17 melons, the greeny crackly kind, and said to all his dear families, goodbye, I'm going to the great green, greasy Limpopo River, set all about with fever trees, to find out what the crocodile has for dinner. And they spanked him once more for luck, though he asked them most politely to stop. Then he went away, a little warm, but not at all astonished, eating melons and throwing the rind about because he could not pick it up. He went to Graham's town to Kimberly, and from Kimberly to Kama's country, and from Kama's country, he went east by north, eating melons all the time, till at last he came to the banks of the red, gray, green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, precisely as Colo Colo Bird had said. I'll enlarge this a little bit. Now you must know and understand, O best beloved, that till that very week and day and hour and minute, this satiable elephant's child had never seen a crocodile and did not know what one was like. It was all his satiable curiosity. The first thing that he found was a bicolored python rock, snake curled around the rock. "Excuse me," said the elephant's child most politely, "but have you seen such a thing as a crocodile in these promiscuous parts?" "Have I seen a crocodile?" said the bicolored python rock snake in a voice of dreadful scorn. What will you ask me next?" "Excuse me," said the elephant's child, "but could you kindly tell me what he has for dinner?" The bicolored python rock snake uncoiled himself very quickly from the rock and spanked the elephant's child with his scalesome, flailsome tail. "That is odd," said the elephant's child, "because my father and my mother and my uncle and my aunt, not to mention my other aunt, the hippopotamus, and my other uncle, the baboon, have all spanked me for my satiable curiosity, and I suppose this is the same thing." So he said goodbye very politely to the bicolored python rock snake and helped to coil him up on the rock again and went on, a little warm, but not all that astonished, eating melons and throwing the rind about, because he could not pick it up, till he trod on what he thought was a log of wood at the very edge of the great gray, green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees. But it was really the crocodile, O best beloved, and the crocodile winked one eye like this. "Excuse me," said the elephant's child most politely, "but do you happen to have a crocodile in these promiscuous parts?" Then the crocodile winked the other eye and lifted half his tail out of the mud, and the elephant's child stepped back most politely, because he did not wish to be spanked again. "Come hither, little one," said the crocodile. "Why do you ask such things?" "Excuse me," said the elephant's child most politely, "but my father has spanked me and my mother has spanked me, not to mention my tall aunt, the ostrich, and my tall uncle, the giraffe, who can kick ever so hard, as well as my broad aunt, the hippopotamus, and my hairy uncle, the baboon, and including the bicolored python rock snake with the scalesome, flailsome tail, just up the bank, who spanks harder than any of them. And so, if it's quite all the same to you, I don't want to be spanked anymore. Come hither, little one, said the crocodile, for I am the crocodile. And he wept crocodile tears to show it was quite true. Then the elephant's child grew all breathless and panted and kneeled down on the bank and said, "You're the very person I have come looking for all these long days. Will you please tell me what you have for dinner?" "Come hither, little one," said the crocodile, "and I'll whisper." Then the elephant's child put his head down so close to the crocodile's musky, tusky mouth, and the crocodile caught him by his little nose, which up to that very week, day, hour, and minute had been no bigger than a boot, though much more useful. I think, said the crocodile, and he said it between his teeth, like this. I think today I will begin with Elephant's Child. Goodness. At this, O best beloved, the Elephant's Child was much annoyed, and he said, speaking through his nose like this, let go, you're hurting me. Then the bicolored python, and this is the word let. I can't let, there's a couple errors in there I let go. The bicolored python, rock snake, scuffled down from the bank and said, my young friend, if you do not know by now, immediately and instantly, pull as hard as you ever can. It is my opinion that your acquaintance in the large pattern leather luster, and by this he meant crocodile, will jerk you into yonder limpid stream before you can say Jack Robinson. This is the way bicolored python rock snakes always talk. The Elephant's Child sat back on his haunches and pulled and pulled and pulled, and his nose began to stretch, and the crocodile floundered in the water, making it all creamy with great sweeps of his tail, and he pulled and he pulled and he pulled, and the Elephant's Child's nose kept on stretching, and the Elephant's Child spread all his 4 little legs and pulled and pulled and pulled, and his nose kept on stretching, and the crocodile thrashed his tail like an oar, and he pulled and he pulled and he pulled, and at each pull the Elephant's Child nose grew longer and longer, and it hurt him. Then the Elephant's Child felt his legs slipping, and he said through his nose, which was now nearly 5 feet long, this is too much for me to be. Then the bicolored python rock snake came down from the bank and knotted himself in a double clove hitch round the Elephant Child's hind legs and said, rash and inexperienced traveler, we will now seriously devote ourselves to a little high tension, because if we do not, it is my impression that yonder self-propelling man of war with armor-plated upper deck, and by this he meant, oh beloved, he meant the crocodile, will permanently fiddleate your future career. That is the way all bicolored python rock snakes always talk. So he pulled, and the Elephant's Child pulled, and the crocodile pulled, but the Elephant's Child and the bicolored python rock snake pulled hardest, and at last the crocodile let go of the Elephant Child's nose, and plop, with a plop you could hear all up and down the Limpopo. Then the Elephant's Child sat down most hard and sudden, but first he was careful to say thank you to the bicolored python rock snake, and next he was kind to his poor pulled nose and wrapped it all up in cool banana leaves and hung it in the great green greasy Limpopo to cool. What are you doing that for? Said the bicolored python rock snake. Excuse me, said the Elephant's Child, but my nose is badly out of shape, and I'm waiting for it to shrink. Then you'll have to wait a long time, said the bicolored python rock snake. Some people do not know what is good for them. The Elephant's Child sat there for 3 days, waiting for his nose to shrink, but it never grew any shorter. And besides, it made him squint. For, oh best beloved, you will see and understand that the crocodile had pulled it out to a really, truly trunk, same as all the elephants have today. At the end of the third day, a fly came and stung him on the shoulder. And before he knew what he was doing, he lifted up his trunk and hit that fly dead with the end of his trunk. Vantage number 1, said the bicolored python rock snake. You couldn't have done that with a mere smear nose. Try and eat it now. Try and eat a little now. Before he thought what he was doing, the elephant's child put out his trunk and plucked a large bundle of grass, dusted it clean against his forelegs, and stuffed it into his own mouth. Vantage number 2, said the bicolored python rock snake. You couldn't have done that with a mere smear nose. Don't you think the sun is very hot here? It is, said the elephant child, and before he thought what he was doing, he scooped up some mud from the banks of the gray-green greasy Limpopo, and he slapped it on his head, where it made a cool, sloppy, schlossy mud cap, all trickly behind his ears. Vantage number 3, said the python rock snake. You couldn't have done that with a mere smear nose. Now, how do you feel about being spanked again? Excuse me, said the elephant's child, but I should not like that at all. How would you like to spank somebody, said the bicolored python rock snake. I should like that very much indeed, said the elephant's child. Well, said the bicolored python snake, you will find that new nose of yours very useful to spank the animals with. Thank you, said the elephant's child. I'll remember that, and now I'll go home to my dear families and try it. So the elephant child went home to Africa, frisking and whisking his trunk. When he wanted fruit, he pulled the fruit down from a tree instead of waiting for it to fall as he used to do. And when he wanted grass, he plucked the grass up from the ground instead of going down on his knees to eat it like he used to do. When the flies bit him, he broke off the branch of the tree and used it as a fly whisk, and he made himself a new, cool, slushy, squishy, new mud cap whenever the sun was hot. When he felt lonely walking through Africa, he sang to himself down his trunk, and the noise was louder than several brass bands. He went especially out of his way to find a broad hippopotamus. She was no relation to his, and she spanked her very hard to make sure that the bicolored python snake, that what he had spoken was the truth about his new trunk. The rest of the time, he picked up the melon rinds that he had dropped along the way to the Limpopo, for he was a tidy pachyderm. One dark evening, he came back to all his dear families, and he coiled up his trunk and said, "How do you do?" They were very glad to see him, and immediately said, "Come here and be spanked for your satiable curiosity." "Pooh," said the elephant child. "I don't think you animals know anything about spanking, but I do, and I'll show you." So he uncurled his trunk, and he knocked 2 of the dear brothers head over heels. Here he is getting his bananas. "Oh, bananas," they said they, "where did you learn that trick? And what have you done to your nose?" "I got a new one from the crocodile on the banks of the gray-green, greasy Limpopo River," said the elephant child. "I asked him what he had for dinner, and he gave me this to keep." "It looks very ugly," said the hairy Uncle Baboon. "It does," said the elephant's child, "but it's very useful." And he picked up his hairy uncle, the baboon, by one hairy leg, and he hooved him over to the hornet's nest. Then that bad elephant's child spanked all the dear families for a long time until they were very warm. and greatly astonished, he pulled out his tall ostrich and tail feathers, and he caught his tall uncle the giraffe by the hind leg and dragged him through the thorn bush, and he shouted at his broad aunt the hippopotamus, and he blew bubbles into her ear when she was sleeping in the water after her meals. But he never let anyone touch Kokolo Bird. At last, things grew so exciting that his dear family members went off one by one in a hurry to the banks of the great green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, to borrow new noses from the crocodile. When they came back, nobody spanked anybody anymore. And ever since that day, oh, best beloved, all the elephants you will ever see, besides all those that you won't, have trunks precisely like the trunk of the satiable elephant's child. I keep 6 honest serving men. They taught me all I knew. Their names were what and where and when and how and where and who. I send them over land and sea. I send them east and west. But after they have worked for me, I give them all a rest. I let them rest from 9 till 5, for I am busy then, as well as breakfast, lunch, and tea, for they are hungry men. But different folk have different views. I know a person small. She keeps 10 million serving men who get no rest at all. She sends them abroad on her own affairs. From the second she opens her eyes, 1 million hows, 2 million wheres, and 7 million whys. Asking all the questions. The elephant's child. Again, that's with video E, letter, video 11, book 11. That was a long story. Hope you read it with me till the end. Bye-bye now. You can purchase this curriculum at dyslexiasolutions.com. On the home page, I have the link. Bye-bye now. And please like this video and share it.